Hi, just to clarify, some of the audio in this video is a bit weird. That's because of my terrible Wi-Fi. I still hope you really enjoy it. I really enjoyed making it, and yeah, have fun watching.
Hello and welcome back to my channel. I'm Helen and today I'm going to be doing a really special video with my friend who you'll be able to see somewhere on the screen, and that is Jenny.
Hi!
So Jenny is here with me via a Facebook Messenger call because obviously we're both in lockdown, but we're going to be doing Desert Island books. We have each chosen 8 books, one for a category. We've chosen 8 categories, and it'll make more sense once we actually start doing it, but essentially these are the 8 books if we could have no other books that we'd choose in lockdown. So the first book is one that you choose for the characters, and Jenny is going to start us off with that.
The book that I picked for characters is not one that I have with me, so I'm going to have to get Helen to hold it up for me because my copy is not here, and that is The Binding by Bridget Collins. So The Binding is a historical fiction, kind of low fantasy, and it's about books. I can't really say a lot about the books in this story without kind of spoiling the whole thing. The reason I love these characters is because there's quite a small cast, but they're all very kind of in-depth characters, and the 2 leads are really well explored, and it's really an emotional journey, this book. Not a whole lot happens in terms of events, and a lot of it is flashback, but it's a really emotional story and I really loved it. It's a really interesting premise, I thought, and it opened up a lot of questions, got a very strong cast of characters, and I enjoyed it a lot, so that's why I'm bringing it with me to my desert island.
So my book that I would choose for characters is Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. Six of Crows is a very character-driven book. It has 5 main perspectives, each one a member of the Dregs, a crew in Ketterdam who come together to break into this impenetrable fortress, the Ice Court, and to steal something. It's an impossible heist. They're led by Kaz Brecker, who is feared and revered in equal measure among the gang, and it is so tight-knit and wonderful to see these characters sort of grow and emerge. And so many of these characters are really special to me, especially Nina Zenik, who is one of the Grisha in the group. She's one of the first characters I ever read who didn't apologise for her weight, I guess you could say, and I read this at a time when I was really struggling with body image, and reading a character who was really confident in herself and who didn't put her size first, which was what I was doing at the time, was really refreshing and really helped me sort of deal with my own anxieties and insecurities. So I would definitely pick this book. It also has a great plot. Okay, so the next category is a book we choose for the world it is set in.
So the book I picked for the world category is a high fantasy book because I feel like those have always got really interesting worlds and lots to kind of talk about in terms of the world building. So I picked The Prior of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. And this book is a Brit, so there's a lot going on, and the world is absolutely massive. I'm going to show you the map. The map goes over 3 pages. You can see there's half of it, and there's the other half. So this book is set in a world where dragons exist, as you can probably tell from the cover. But it's got a lot going on in terms of kind of court politics, kind of espionage type plotline going on. And what I thought was really interesting about this world was that you can see in different places in the continent how people have been raised and how the kind of ideologies of their countries have affected the way that different people think in the story. And people in some parts of the continent think that the dragons are gods and should be worshipped and treated as some kind of sacred beings, and others in other countries think that the dragons are demons. So the kind of overarching plot is all about these dragons and international conflict with people and also dragons. But the story is told by 4 different narrators in different places across this world. So there's lots of smaller plots going on. It's all very intricate. And it definitely earns its page count. So it looks a bit intimidating, but it's a really good read for fantasy fans, and I would definitely recommend it.
So the book that I would choose for this prompt is The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. This book begins in our world, but soon explodes into a myriad of different worlds, partly because the story is told through the medium of short stories. And each of the short stories is set sort of in a different world or in a different place or in a different part of this very intense and intricate and beautiful world that is sort of the world of stories and the world of storytelling. So in this book we follow Zachary Ezra Rawlins, who is obsessed with books and reading, and one day he finds a book of short stories, and the third short story in it is a story of him when he was younger. It describes exactly what he did, exactly what happened, and he begins to get intrigued by this and begins to hunt down the sort of writer of the book and where the book came from and investigate it. And all he has to go on are 3 symbols: a key, a sword, and a bee. The story sort of explodes from there, and we have a sort of beautiful adventure through this magical, mystical land. I love this book so much, and I could read it again and again, partly because of the short stories. They sort of read like myth or legend, and I absolutely love that. The next prompt is a book that we personally think is underrated. This can either be in general or just in Bookstagram and Booktube.
So the book that I picked for this category is an indie book, which I feel like in general tend to get less hype online than traditionally published books. This is The Saviour's Champion by Jenna Moresi. And this is also fantasy, but the story follows the main character, whose name is Tobias. And Tobias is a farm worker, but he wants to be an artist. And the reason why he's working on a farm is because his sister was very severely injured, and his family need the money to pay for her medical care. The magic in this story all comes from one character, who is the queen of the realm, and her name is the Saviour. And the main plot of the story is about a tournament called the Sovereign's Tournament, which is basically 20 young men from around the kingdom compete for the Saviour's hand in marriage. And Tobias decides to enter this tournament because compensation that his family will receive for his probable death will be enough to set up his mother and sister to live well for the rest of their lives. It is very bloody. I'm not very good with blood and gore, and to be honest, I didn't find this quite as bad as I was expecting to, but there were a few times where I had to kind of close the book and put it away for a while because I didn't want to think about it too much. So if you're very sensitive to blood, maybe don't read this one. And also it's got quite a lot of strong language in it, but yeah, otherwise really great read, sort of battle royale type adult Hunger Games, I guess, but with magic and court politics. And there's a companion novel coming out at some point soon, which is going to be called The Saviour's Sister, I believe. So I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, underrated. And if you're into dark fantasy, you should maybe give it a go.
So my underrated book doesn't sound quite as interesting as that. It is The Blind Assassin by Margaret Atwood. This did win the Booker Prize when it came out in 2001. However, I've really almost never seen anyone talk about this online, and I think it is so underrated. It is, I guess, a contemporary. It doesn't have very much magic in it. We follow Iris Chase, who is looking back over the events of the last 80 or so years to find out what happened to her sister Laura, who drove off a bridge 2 days after the Second World War ended, following a highly successful career writing novels. And Iris goes back to their childhood and then follows their story through until she gets married. She has to deal with her sister, and at the same time as all of this, we have another storyline about two unnamed figures in a hotel room, a man and a woman meeting, and the man tells the woman a story of a blind assassin and aliens and magic. I should also say The Blind Assassin is the name of the book that Laura puts out that makes her hugely popular. So we have multiple mysteries in this book and multiple storylines, and it's really good. Margaret Atwood manages to pull them all together in a way that I was amazed at when I originally read it. I love it so much. I think it's really underrated. It's very slow to get into. The first 200 to 300 pages maybe, I kind of wanted to put it down, but once I got past there, I felt like it was one of the best books I'd ever read. So the next book on this list is our Guilty Pleasure Reads.
I kind of struggled to come up with anything that really fit the category of guilty pleasure. I eventually landed on another one that Helen's going to have to show you because I don't own a copy, but that is Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. I picked this book as a guilty pleasure partly just because I wanted to put it on the list and there wasn't anywhere else where I could reasonably put it, but also because it's a YA, and YA isn't necessarily always considered intelligent literature, but I don't care because I think it's fun. So this story is another book about books, but the books in this world, or at least the ones relating to sorcery, are alive. And if you damage a book, it can turn into this grotesque, almost demonic creature called a malefic. And if a book transforms into a malefic, there's a lot of problems kind of associated with that, because you can't kill it without destroying the book. And if you destroy the book, all the spells inside will be lost. So it's a really interesting premise, I thought. And the way that the magic system is built up around these books, I thought it was really well thought through and really well integrated into the story. So I really liked all three of the main characters in this book. The main protagonist, Elizabeth, was a really interesting character. She was very strong-willed, and I really admired her throughout the book. The story is kind of a mystery quest type thing. It's not particularly profound, but it's a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed this book.
So my guilty pleasure read is Beautiful Player by Christina Lauren. Christina Lauren have also written books like Autobiography, The Unhoneymooners, lots of things that are really popular on BookTube, but I really like this first series they wrote, which is a series of romances. The first one is an office romance. In fact, most of them are office romances, but Beautiful Player, the one that I love, is between a scientist named Hannah and a man named Will, who is asked by Hannah's brother to look after her and sort of help her become more popular and get a life outside of her job. Hannah then asks Will to teach her how to flirt and how to get a boyfriend. Unfortunately, the two of them are also simultaneously falling in love with each other. So the next book on our list is our comfort read.
For this category, I picked Clockwork Prince by Cassandra Clare. The Shadowhunters series is an urban fantasy series. There are a lot of books now that have come out in the Shadowhunters world. There's the Mortal Instruments series, which is 6 books, and 3 other trilogies now. The Infernal Devices, which is set in the Victorian era in London, is definitely my favourite trilogy of the series. So Clockwork Prince is the second one in the series, and it follows a young woman named Tessa as she kind of discovers the magic that exists in London and this world of secrets and demons and all sorts of other fantastical creatures. I can't really say a lot about this one without spoiling the first one, but it's my favourite one in the trilogy, and it's also got Gem on the cover. And I've been reading this series since I was about 15, so the world is very familiar to me now, and that's why I picked it as a comfort read, because it's kind of it's a familiar place, and I know it quite well now.
So the book I chose for comfort read is The House with Chicken Legs by Sophie Anderson. This is an incredibly sweet and beautifully written middle grade about a character named Marinka, who is the granddaughter of Baba Yaga. And she is destined to be the next Baba Yaga, but all she wants to do is live a normal life and have friends. She doesn't want to have to guide souls to the afterlife as the Baba Yagas have to do. And she is so annoyed that her house just keeps getting up on its chicken legs and running away whenever she is about to make a friend. And this book sort of follows her quest as she attempts to make friends and as the house has other ideas and sweeps her away. So I really recommend it if you're looking for a fun, comforting middle grade. So the next book is a book that you didn't expect to love.
Okay, so for this category, I picked a book that I'm not entirely sure why I didn't expect to love it, because in theory it's got everything that I enjoy. But for some reason, it took me ages to start it once I had a copy. And I don't know, for some reason I was convinced that it wasn't going to be very good. But I actually love it. And that is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. So this book is a retelling of the Iliad by Homer, which is a classical Greek epic poem about the Trojan War. This book is told from the perspective of Patroclus, who is a soldier in the Greek army. But the story in this book actually starts well before the beginning of the Iliad. It follows Patroclus and Achilles as children, and then through their adolescence, growing up until the start of the war. The actual Trojan War isn't the main plot of this book. It's definitely more of a love story than a story of war. But if you know Greek mythology and Greek legends at all, you can probably work out that it is a tragedy, and you will probably cry, but it is worth it. I really love this book.
So the book that I chose for a book I didn't expect to love was, again, a book I don't know why I didn't expect to love this. I thought I'd like it, but it very swiftly became one of my favourite books of last year, and that is Middle Game by Seanan McGuire. This is a fantasy. In it, we follow a character called Reed, who is attempting to actualise the doctrine, this mysterious thing that if he manages to actualise it, it will help make him a god. So he splits it and puts it into two children, twins, Roger and Dodger, and one of them, Roger, gets all the languages, and the other one, Dodger, gets maths. And the two of them are then separated and sent on their merry way, and they get to the age of about 5 when they discover, with no knowledge of each other, that they can telepathically communicate. And that's kind of where the story takes off. This is really good. It has some really compelling characters, a really compelling storyline. It also has a book within a book, which is one of my favourite tropes in literature. And it has a lot of alchemy and fantasy in, which is always fun. The next book is either the first or last book of a series.
So most of what I read is series, as you can see from the bookshelf behind me. I've got lots of series. But for this, I decided to go back to the series that I think really kind of got me into reading as a kid. And you probably think it's Harry Potter, but it's not. It's actually Percy Jackson. So I picked The Lightning Thief because I can't read this book enough times. I keep going back to it. It's very nostalgic for me. This series was my childhood. I got this copy of The Lightning Thief as well as The Sea of Monsters and The Titan's Curse for, I believe, my 12th birthday as a box set of 3. And I had finished them all within 2 days and had to drag my mum out to, I believe Borders was still a thing at the time, to drag my mum out to Borders in the middle of the afternoon one day because I needed the next 2 books. and you can see that my copy of this book is very battered, because I've loved it all of my childhood, and my sister also has borrowed it and read it several times. Yeah, I don't think I could go anywhere without this book. It's very special to me, and that's why I picked it, because if I'm going into lockdown with only 8 books, I really can't imagine this not being one of them.
Mine isn't the series that got me into reading, which would probably either be The Worst Witch or Harry Potter. The book that I've chosen is another series I discovered quite recently, but it's now a series that I've fallen so deeply in love with I don't think I could go anywhere without it. And that is The Diviners by Libba Bray. This is the first book in the series, and in this we follow Evie O'Neill, who has been sent to New York to live with her uncle, following a huge scandal regarding her and a boy at home. And the scandal is that she has shared his secrets with everyone, because when she touches an object, she knows what the person has done. She can associate the memories with it. And she travels to New York and to the Creepy Crawly Museum, the nickname for her uncle's Museum of the Occult and Supernatural, where she becomes involved with a murder mystery, believing that with her talents she can help discover the truth behind it. This book has quite an unlikable main character in it, but it's the side characters that I love. Theta and Memphis are 2 of the best characters I've ever read, as is Henry. Unfortunately, you don't get my favourite character until book 2, but I would still choose this series, it's really good. Final book each of us has chosen is the book from our TBR that we would take with us.
So for this category, I wanted to pick a book that I actually own. I have gone for Owl Sense by Miriam Darlington. And this is really different from what I would usually pick up. This is non-fiction, for one thing. It's a memoir, I believe. But I was given this for Christmas, and it looks really interesting. And I can't really tell you much because I haven't read it, so I'll just read you the blurb. The owl has captivated the human imagination for millennia as a predator, messenger, emblem of wisdom, or portent of doom. Owl Sense tells a new story. On owl walks with her teenage son Benji, Miriam Darlington begins a quest to identify every European species of this elusive bird. From Britain she travels to Spain, France, Serbia, and Finland, and to the frosted borders of the Arctic. Along the way, however, Benji succumbs to a mysterious and disabling illness, and Miriam's endeavour soon becomes entangled with the search for his cure. Bringing the strangeness and magnificence of owls to life, Owl Sense is a book about wildness in nature, but also in the unpredictable course of our human lives. I think that's going to make for a really emotional read. I'm excited to pick this one up.
So the book I chose was A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. This is a huge book, and all I know about this book is that there's videos going around of people getting to the end and just crying. So I assume you could get quite a strong emotional connection with the characters. I know it follows them from university through to middle age, and I'm going to read you the blurb because that is all I know. When 4 classmates from a small Massachusetts college moved to New York to make their way, they're broke, adrift, and buoyed only by their friendship and ambition. There is kind, handsome Willem, an aspiring actor JB, a quick-witted, sometimes cruel painter pursuing fame in the art world, Malcolm, a frustrated architect at a prominent firm, and withdrawn, brilliant, enigmatic Jude, who serves as their centre of gravity. Over the decades, their relationships deepen and darken, tinged by addiction, success, and pride. Yet their greatest challenge, each comes to realise, is Jude himself. By midlife, a terrifyingly talented lawyer, yet an increasingly broken man, his mind and body scarred by an unspeakable childhood, and haunted by a degree of trauma that he fears he will not only be able to overcome, but that will define his life forever. It's been intriguing me for ages, and I thought that if I was going to be in lockdown for an undetermined amount of time and I only had 8 books, this would have to be on them. So we're now finished our books. But we also chose some other items. The first one of these is a podcast.
For a podcast, I picked a series on YouTube, which I guess it might be cheating a little bit to call it a podcast. It depends on your definition. It does have visuals, but it's mostly audio theatre, and that's Discord Murder Party by Internet Remix. Discord Murder Party is a kind of meta theatre piece. Discord Murder Party follows Vincent Reed, who is a fighter pilot from the First World War, and he wakes up from an alternate life to remember who he is and realizes that he's been trapped in basically a time loop in this timeless, ever-shifting void, and his whole existence within this void is being controlled by an eldritch deity who calls herself the Murder God. And Vincent makes a deal with this Murder God to free all of the souls that she has trapped in the void, and she agrees to do that on the condition that he can wake them all up and persuade them to side with him. So what we have is this huge cast of characters who, for the most part, change every episode until eventually they wake up and their real lives and their real stories are revealed. And they're all from different time periods and different places across the world. And it's these 14 actors who all come up with their own characters and backstories, and none of them are allowed to tell anybody else who their character is until they are revealed in the show. So nobody knows what's going on except Kristen, who plays the Murder God and is the narrator of the show. They're all amazingly talented actors, and I think they definitely deserve more views than they get on their videos. It's a very long series, but I think if you're at all interested, they've just started season 3, and one of the cast members made a 15-minute summary video of seasons 1 and 2. You could, in theory, watch that one video and then go straight into season 3. But I think if you're interested, it's definitely worth watching all of the backlog. Season 2 especially is really, really good. They didn't really know what they were doing for most of season 1, but it's still worth a listen. I really love this show. Content warnings are given in relevant episodes. Sometimes it can get quite heavy, but they do announce that at the beginning of the episode.
The one I've chosen is No Such Thing as a Fish, which is a weekly podcast produced and put out by the people who find the facts for QI. It is really fascinating. The normal people who do it are Andrew Hunter-Murray, James Harkin, Anna Chizinski, and Dan Schreiber, and each of them each week comes with one really interesting fact that they've found, and the others chip in and they discuss the facts, and it's really funny. It's really heartwarming, I guess, in places, and it's just really good. They've just released all of their backlog onto Spotify because of the quarantine, so you can listen all the way from season 1. So the next thing is a disc, because obviously we were basing this off Desert Island discs, so we had to come up with some sort of disc or soundtrack.
There were a lot of candidates for this one, and a lot of them were movie soundtracks. So shout out to Crimson Peak and Thor Ragnarok, which are 2 wildly different movies, but both have really good soundtracks that I very seriously considered putting on this list. I did eventually decide to go for an album with songs with lyrics. So the album that I picked is Death of a Bachelor by Panic at the Disco. I really like this album. It was the first Panic album that I listened to all the way through, and it's the only one where there aren't any songs on it that I skip. So that's why I picked it. I think my favourite song on the album is probably House of Memories. I really like that one. But it's a really good album in general. I think if I only had one album to listen to, I'd probably be able to get through listening to that one on repeat without going insane.
So I also struggled to choose this one, and Crimson Peak was also quite high up my list. But in the end, I went for a musical, and I went for the musical Hadestown, which the musical itself is the myth of Orpheus and Eurydice, but set in a Great Depression style era where there has been drastic climate change, capitalism is rampant. I love this musical so much. It has so many amazing songs, I would probably go a bit mad listening to it because there's certain themes and motifs that are repeated, but I wouldn't actually mind going mad if that was what I went mad to. Okay, so the next thing is a TV show.
So the show that I eventually picked is a BBC show called Death in Paradise. Death in Paradise is a murder mystery series. For the most part, each episode is its own story. There are a few two-parters kind of at the beginnings and ends of seasons, but mostly each episode is its own thing. Series 1 follows, I've forgotten the name of the character. He's played by Ben Miller, and he's a detective from London who's been sent out to work for the police on an island in the Caribbean called Sainte Marie, and he basically just kind of gets to be a part of the team of the local police force, and the running plot through the series is all about kind of the friendships and the relationships between these characters. The mysteries are really clever. There's always kind of something that's impossible about the mystery, and each episode ends with a kind of reveal of not just who the murderer is, but also how they did it. I would take this show with me because it's not one that you have to watch all in order, and you could just watch one episode. You wouldn't maybe get the same emotional attachment to the characters, but the mystery and the clever writing is all still there with the episodes as individuals.
So my TV show, I was tossing up between this one and Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which is another one of my favourite TV shows, but in the end I chose Community, partly because I've only just started watching it. I started it last Thursday and I'm now slightly obsessed with it, and partly because the characters in it have, even though I've only watched a season and a half, have grown so much already, and I'm really curious to see as to where their character arcs will go. Also, the fact I haven't watched very much of it means that if I took it to a desert island, I would have quite a lot to catch up on. Essentially, Community is about a study group who start off as a Spanish study group, and they get together under a pretense from a man called Jeff, who is a disgraced lawyer. The characters are really lovable. Well, most of them are really lovable, and most of them are really human, which I really enjoy in TV shows, so that would be my choice. Please ignore the echo. Finally, we have the luxury item you would bring with you to the desert island.
Yeah, so my luxury item might be cheating, because it is technically also a book, but it's not a book with words in it, it's my sketchbook. I don't think I could go anywhere without having some means to draw, so yeah, I'm taking my sketchbook with me everywhere I go, basically. I think I would go nuts if I didn't have some kind of sketchbook or paper or something with me for any extended period of time. So yeah, my last item that I'm bringing with me is technically 2 items because I'm going to need a pencil as well. But yeah, I'm taking my sketchbook with me.
Item is also technically a book, and it is my bullet journal. This is a brand new one that I've only just started. The reason I would choose my bullet journal is because I need this to stay organised. I don't think I could go to a desert island or go into lockdown without it. Okay, so thank you so much for watching this video. Sorry about the technical problems we had at the end, but thank you so much for watching.
Thank you so much for watching again. This is from me editing. As you can see on the screen, I'm currently scrolling through Jenny's Instagram. I will link this as well as her Redbubble down below, as well as all of my social media as always. I really recommend you go follow Jenny. Her artwork is absolutely stunning and she's an amazing person and an amazing friend. I'm very grateful for her to doing this video. I'll see you in my next video. Until then, I hope you stay really safe. Bye!